How big should my pond be? That's a question that a lot of us ask when we're first trying to build a pond, but is there a right answer? No. It's purely up to you how big of a yard you have, what purpose for the pond you have, and what do you want to put in the pond. So the 3 questions you should be asking is, how big is your yard? What is the purpose of the pond? And what are you planning to put in the pond? First, let's go over how big is your yard. So if you have an apartment or just a very small yard, you won't be able to fit like a 12-foot by 12-foot pond. But there are a few other ways you can keep ponds when you have a small yard or you live in an apartment. So let me know, drop a comment down below if you would like to see a video on that. But today I'll be speaking on the type of ones that I have, a pond with a liner and then you put rocks on top of it, you fill it up, it makes a pond. Or one of the plastic bin ones from Home Depot, but I'll be talking a little bit about both of them today. So it's simple. If you have a smaller yard, you're gonna want a smaller pond, unless you want it to cover your entire yard, which is kind of what Paul Cafaro did. And if you have a larger yard like I do, you wanted a bigger pond. I ended up with about a medium-sized pond, an 8 by 10 by 2 foot deep. It's about 1,000 to 1,200 gallons. And maybe you want a very large pond, or maybe you're a kid and your parents won't let you have a large pond, or you don't have the money for a large pond, which is kind of like what I did. That's why I saved my money, got a decent sized pond, and got the best quality products that will last years. Shout out to Aquascape. So now that we talked about the size of your yard, we're gonna talk about the purpose for your pond. So the purpose is very important. Do you want fish? Do you want fish and turtles? Do you want just turtles? Do you want it to be an aquatic garden and have only plants? Do you want creatures like frogs and newts? Well, that's things I'm gonna answer for you right now. Some people want these for their enjoyment. Some don't. I'm gonna talk about it more. And if you guys have any ideas to subtract or add from this video, please feel free to comment down below. So let's talk about the purpose if you want fish. And I'll actually be putting timestamps down below in the description. So I'll mark them all, whether each segment I'll be talking about fish. I'll go over the exact sizes of ponds. So information down in the description below. Don't feel bored, skip to where you want. Or please, if you're a loyal visionary, and if you haven't subscribed, because like 80% of you aren't subscribed, so please subscribe down below. But if you are a loyal visionary, stay for the whole video, it'd mean a lot. But fish, I'm assuming if you're gonna stay for this segment, you're looking to get possibly fish. Now, what you're probably considering is, what kind of fish should I get? I'm gonna tell you basically all the types of fish that are most common for people to keep in their backyard ponds. So there's goldfish and then koi. If you don't know what a koi is, it's kind of like a goldfish, but they get way bigger. There's guppies, mollies, and platies. They're more of a warm water species, so they're great for smaller ponds or even larger ponds that are a little bit more shallow. But they're really only good if you have a constant heater running in it or you live in warm areas like southern Florida. So unless you live in Florida, you probably can't keep guppies, mollies, and platies in your pond because it'd be too cold and they'd die. And then you can have small native fish like bluegill, sunfish, green sunfish. There's all multiple little species of them, but they're all much the same species under a bluegill or a sunfish. Some of them are small, stay around this size. Some of them can get to a decent size, about this big, about the size of a small plate. But they're great, they're fun, they're really active, and you can pretty much keep them anywhere because they live almost anywhere in every state, I'm sure. Last are predator fish. The most common in ponds is being a bass and or a catfish. Largemouth bass, a lot of people are familiar with them, average around 12-15 inches as a small one, can get up to 23 inches. That's a decent sized one. Of course, they can get bigger and or smaller. And then a catfish, channel catfish, these predator fish get big and they like to eat a lot of food. And it's very fun to watch them eat because they're predators. So this is mainly good if you're gonna get a big pond over 1,000 gallons. So over an 8 by 11 foot by 2 feet deep pond. But if you happen to live in southern Florida, there are a lot more exotic species. If you have a big pond, you can get arowanas, haku, gar. Gars do live in a lot colder climate sometimes, but they do end up being in Florida, but they're actually illegal for me to keep in my state. And again, these do get very large, so only good if for these specific fish, you really gotta live in South Florida. unless you have an indoor pond with a bunch of heaters. Now, number 2, let's talk about turtles. Well, personally, I have 2 turtles in my pond, and I own a tortoise. This is my rescue tortoise. You can go see this video that's gonna pop up if you'd like to see how I rescued him. But these turtles in general, are cute, sometimes feisty, but are they right for you and your pond? Let me answer that. If you have the time to feed them, train them, spend time outside, get them to be used to you and your pond, maybe do water changes. So if you're a kid, probably yes, you have enough time. If you're an adult, figure out your priorities, and if you want turtles but you don't have time to feed them, do water changes on your pond, stuff like that, then don't get them. But now let's go into specific types of turtles that you can get for your outdoor pond. The most common is a red-eared slider. Starts off at about the size of a quarter and can get up to 12 inches in length. Some vary in size because of gender, so we can get bigger and smaller. But let me name off a few turtle species, turtle types that are good for almost any weather you live in, any state, any climate. But let me start off by saying that red-eared sliders are an invasive species, at least for me in California. So look up, are red-eared sliders invasive to whatever your state is, and if it says no, then you're free to go to a pond and catch some turtles and put them in your pond. But if they're not, legally when you catch them, you're supposed to keep them, not release them, or kill them. And invasive means that there's a lot of them, overpopulated, and we don't want them because they ruin the ecosystem that has already been set for our native species. So red-eared sliders, at least in my area, aren't native here. Eventually someone got a pet turtle, didn't want it, and released it, eventually repopulated, and that's a lot of times how invasive species repopulate, by just people releasing their pets. So just check up on your laws, state laws. If you're looking for red-eared sliders, just make sure they're legal and not invasive. If they are invasive, you can go and catch one, but you have to keep it unless you're gonna kill it. But check up with your laws. Now let's get on to specific types that you can keep. Again, red-eared sliders, there's cooters, mud and musk turtles, yellow belly sliders, painted turtles, and possibly snapping turtles, but you have to look up the laws in your state if it's legal to keep a snapping turtle, and making sure that you have a right setup for it. For me, kind of sad because I eventually think I could give a snapping turtle a proper home, but they're illegal in California. But maybe you want creatures like frogs, newts. For those, they're a variety of species. So if you have like a lot of plants, frogs like to hide, that's needed. Make sure your ponds are at least a foot deep and at least 3 feet by 4 feet, around 50 plus gallons, and that should be good for a frog. So let me just skip on those things. And just a big tip, when you are keeping turtles, it is very important. This isn't important if you use a plastic, like a hard plastic pond liner at Home Depot, the hard plastic. But if you get the flimsy plastic pond liner, make sure your pond liner is at least 40 mils thick. They measure it thickness in mils, M-I-L''S. A lot of times people sell real cheap ones at Home Depot that are 12 and a half mils thick or 20 mils thick. Turtles, claws, and even fish with sharp fins can slice through or puncture your liner when it's very thin. So when having a thicker liner, like 40 mils thick, then that's really good. So please go out and buy a quality liner. So now I hope I've talked about all of the types of creatures and or animals or fish that you want to put in your pond. So now I'm gonna go back through each of them and tell you exactly how big, a minimum, how big your pond should be for these creatures. Again, check the timestamps down below if you don't want to go through all of it, or if you are, again, a loyal visionary, subscribe and watch the whole video. Now, let's start with goldfish. There's a lot of different types of goldfish. There's comets, shabunkin, fantail goldfish, ryunkin goldfish, oranda goldfish. If I missed any of your favorite types of goldfish, a bunch of these goldfish look pretty cool and interesting, and are very fun to watch their little mouths start eating, which is kind of why I got goldfish for my pond back there. But let me know if I missed any of your favorite types of small goldfish or small fish type species in the comments below. Go comment if I missed any. So a lot of these goldfish vary in size. Some of these big chubby ones can get about, you know, a nice little palm size, but sometimes comet goldfish, shabunkin goldfish can vary to 3 to maybe even 7 inches. But that's full grown, that's after years of feeding. So there's a large chance that they won't get that big, but there's always a chance that they can. and a lot of times they do. So some of these vary in size, but I will give you a proper gallon amount and pond size for each type of fish and turtles that I'll be talking about. So for goldfish, you should have at least 50 to 60 gallons minimum. 50 gallons, that's really only if it's a full-size goldfish, maybe only one or two. But you can keep a lot of small ones running around. That will last you for quite a while. And a 50-gallon pond comes out to the measurements of about 2.5 feet wide by 3 feet long by at least 1 foot deep. That's the minimum. Of course, always go bigger. If you want to know how many exactly how many fish you can keep in your pond, please go do some research. I'll leave a link down below on how many goldfish you can keep in your pond. Go check that out at the end of the video. I'll leave a reminder at the end so you won't forget. Let's go on to other types of fish. And guys, again, this about 50-60 gallons goes for bluegills too. Those are about for the small bluegills. You can keep maybe 3 or 4 of them in a 50-60 gallon tank. But if you get the big ones, you're gonna need at least like 100 to 300 gallon pond, which surprisingly, even though it sounds like a lot, is not that big. But now let's move on to koi. Koi start off are being sold in pet stores, online. Yes, you can safely buy fish online if you did not know that. But they're mainly sold around 3 inches to 7 inches, and of course people sell them bigger, but that's the most commonly size that people sell them at. Now they're kind of like goldfish, they look like goldfish, but they get a lot bigger. They average around 12 to 15 inches. That's like an average small koi, but a lot of times they can get bigger up to 2 feet when fed properly and if it's the right species, being cared for properly, they can get really big. So for koi, you're gonna need at least 1,000 gallons. That's why Aquascape, they make the best, and I will say it again, originally I was gonna go the cheap way with my pond, buy all the stuff. It may have ended up being a $700, $600 setup, but this was an $800 pond kit. I think it's like $900 now, but it carries 1,000 gallons, and that's the minimum for a koi. So my pond could carry maybe 1 or 2 koi. So 1,000 to 1,200 gallons, again, minimum for a koi. 8 foot wide by 11 feet long by 2 feet deep. That's a minimum right there, and that can carry maybe 2 adult koi. And of course, if you go bigger, you can keep more. But let's get on to predator fish. Now, predator fish are easily my favorite fish to own. I haven't owned many of them because I turned my pond back there and it's sort of a turtle / goldfish pond. But I do have a pool pond. Yes, you guys know that those above ground pools that you always see in someone's backyard or online or at Costco, you can keep them and put fish in them. And that's what I have. I have, I believe, a 10 foot by 10 foot pond, and I'll be keeping that for big predator fish. But today I'm gonna be going over just channel catfish and largemouth bass as predator fish because that's the most common species everyone can keep and the most common for everyone to get a hold of. And if you think a normal channel catfish is boring, go on eBay, online, to a pet store, and go buy an albino channel catfish and raise that one up and see how big that thing gets. So first, I'll be going over channel catfish. Channel catfish, as a full grown, get around 12 to 24 inches, around the size of a koi, the same thickness of a koi, kind of like the same body type almost. So that means they get up to 2 to almost 20 pounds, depending on how much you feed it, of course, and proper size of pond and everything like that. So my pond can actually keep, and if you guys don't know, catfish are bottom feeders, but if you train it, slap some food on the water, they feel the vibrations and they can come up and eat off your hand, from your hand. It's really cool. Go check out the channel, The Fish Whisperer, if you guys want to see footage about that, about hand feeding. But again, channel catfish get to a decent size. I could keep maybe 1 big catfish in my pond or maybe 2 medium-sized catfish. So for 2 medium catfish, around, of course, 1,000 to 1,200 gallons. And if you want a big one, well, you can only keep 1 big one in a 1,000-gallon pond. Otherwise, you need at least 1,500 gallons plus. So again, that's a pond that's about 9 feet wide, 11 feet long, and 2 feet deep. Now, let's move on to largemouth bass. They are a crazy fish to keep. They can start off small, but can end up getting like a smaller average adult is 12 to 15 inches, but can get very large. I've caught one that's around 6.5 pounds. People have reported they catch them at 10 pounds or even larger. But with your average big one is gonna be around 3 to 4 pounds. It could get up to maybe 6 or 7. Of course, it can get even bigger, but because of that fish's genetics, it may or it may not. But my pond, I have really wanted to keep an adult largemouth bass in there, a big one that's like over 4 or 5 pounds. But I personally think because the largemouth bass is a lot taller fish than the koi and a catfish, and they are a lot more active. They are huge predator fish that love to swim and jump, jump out of the water for like, different, whatever. But my pond personally isn't big enough. I think you need at least a minimum of 1,500 gallons or 2,000 to 2,500 gallons. Aquascape sells a nice size pond kit. It is an 11 foot by 16 foot by 2 feet deep pond kit, and that holds around 2,500 gallons. Perfect for maybe 2 to 3 big largemouth bass. But if you really want to go the minimum, you can go for like a 9 to 10 foot wide, 11 to 13 feet long by at least 2 feet deep pond for a largemouth bass, minimum. That's around a bit over, I think, 1,500 gallons. But now, as our last thing, let's talk about turtles. So again, I mentioned red-eared sliders, yellow belly turtles, mud and musk turtles, which only get around, mud and musk turtles only get around an adult about 3.5 inches to 5.5 inches. Great for a small pond. Cooters, yellow belly sliders, painted turtles, these are all great pond options for turtles wherever you live. So first I'm going to be talking about map turtles. Map turtles, cooters get a little bit bigger. They can get up to around 15 inches. It's like an average big female. But red-eared sliders, cooters, map turtles, yellow belly sliders, painted turtles, all average around the same size. Males get smaller, females get larger. An average male for these is 5 to 7, maybe 8 inches. A female is around 7, 8 inches and can get up to 12 or 15 inches. Of course, could be bigger or smaller depending on their genetics. But my pond is an 8 by 11 by 2 feet deep, and I find that that's good for a max of around 3. If you want to push it, possibly 4 adult red-eared sliders. So that's 3 10-inch turtles. But for red-eared sliders, the minimum pond, the red-eared slider type turtles that get around the same size, to keep just one should be, for one adult red-eared slider, should be about 1 to 200 gallons for just one. Or you can keep 2 medium/juvenile sizes of turtles around 2 to 4 inches, but really that's just for one. And then once you get up to around 800 gallons, you can get 2, and then once you get more, you can get more turtles, more gallons, more turtles. But an average size pond kit, it's not super, because if you were to really buy all the cheap equipment and pond liner, you're really still going to be spending $600. So you might as well save $200 or $300 more to buy the literal best pond kit out there, which are from Aquascape, an 8 by 10 pond kit, great for koi and turtles. So why not go buy it? I'll leave a link for the pond kits down below. But now I just went over the average size turtles. Now let's get on to the smaller turtles, like mud and musk turtles. Now why these turtles are called mud and musk turtles, mud turtles, they're turtles. But musk turtles, when you pick them up, sometimes they get scared and they give off a musky odor. But these turtles are very small. Start off to around the size of a quarter when they're very young, maybe even smaller than that. But once they reach a few years in age, maybe 5 to 8 years, then they reach full grown. And of course I could be wrong on that, maybe about 4 to 6 years. But when adults, mud and musk turtles average around the same size, around 3.5 inches to 5.5 inches, being a big adult mud or musk turtle. And why I put mud and musk turtles in the same category? Because they look very similar, and they're often kept together, and they're just a great small turtle to keep. So at least if you want to keep a smaller turtle in your pond, make sure that you don't put a baby in your pond, because I would advise getting either a big mud or musk turtle, because you don't want to have to keep track of a turtle that's the size of a quarter. So I would advise getting a big one or raising it up. And this is kind of like the goldfish. The minimum for a mud or musk turtle is around 50 to 60 gallons for a full-grown turtle. So, like the plastic bin ones at Home Depot, like this, but also an in-ground pond, which again, a 50-gallon is about 2.5 foot wide by 3 feet long by at least a foot deep. And of course, if you want to keep some fish in there, like some goldfish, it's great, but bigger is always better for turtles. Bigger is not always better in some cases, but most cases it is. So guys, I went over actually literally everything. Let me know if I missed anything, missed any of your favorite pond turtles, fish, creatures that you like to keep. Go put them in the comment section below. And if you guys found this informational and are really looking to find out how big your pond should be, go look in the comments down below and see what people are saying. And if you have any questions, send me an email, or of course write down a comment down below. I reply to every single comment, no matter how old the video is, pretty much. So the positive comment shout out right here. Thank you so much for being very positive on this channel, and I reward you guys with a shout out. And the Bible verse of the day is also popping up right here. It's a great verse. I do Bible verse of the day because I'm a Christian and I like to share my faith, and this is one way that I can easily. So thank you guys so much for watching. Peace, love, positivity. Find your vision and follow it. Be a visionary today and subscribe. Join the 20% of viewers that are subscribed. But guys, just letting you know, that's mainly because I have a video that gets a lot of views, like often, and not a lot of people subscribe just from seeing it. They're just like, okay, thanks for the info, goodbye. So it's not like I just have like really bad like people, you know? It's not like that. But join the fam that is subscribed, and I will see you beautiful people next video. Peace.